There was a Bangladesh player who played for Essex, Jahid Ahmed. Some of the stuff that was said to him over the course of his career, terrible stuff.
And I just think if you see a South Asian, Pakistani girl, whatever, Indian girl, playing in the WSL Premier League and on TV every single week, I think that would just inspire more girls to take up the game as well. Yeah, again, even in football, a lot of the young South Asian players who just recently got their GCSE results, they're all flourishing. A lot of them got, 8s and 9s and A stars, which is really good. And clubs are actually looking for really intelligent and bright players.
And I think that's the biggest change, and that's happened as more money has come into the game and as it's kind of seeped in. I think that's been the biggest change that I've seen, especially in women's cricket. The participation levels in Pakistan have gone through the roof in recent years.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of What's Brown Got to Do with It. So today we are joined by two people who specialize in sports. We have Riz Rehman, who is the former professional football player at Brentford FC, and he's currently the player inclusion executive at the Professional Football Association. And we also have Osman Samiuddin, who is the senior editor at ESPN CricInfo and the author of The Unquiet ones. Thank you both for being here today. I'm actually really looking forward to this topic because it's one that resonates very closely with me. And the reason that I wanted to talk about South Asians in sports was predominantly because of my own son. I have a soon-to-be 15-year-old who is mad about football. And as much as I'm trying not to be that Asian parent and allowing him to kind of pursue his dreams and, his passion, it's really difficult to draw the line where it's like, okay, what's passion against reality? So, Riz, I wanted to kind of start with you a little bit about, predominantly football. I know you're doing a lot of work on the South Asian front, and I was actually quite shocked to read some of the statistics where it was something like 0.445% of players of South Asian heritage play in the actual top 4 English divisions. So that's approximately 16 out of 3,500 professionals. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, this topic's been a topic which obviously I've been around for nearly 30 years now. First as a young person growing up, I was 9 or 10 when my dad first asked the coach why there's a lack of Asian players in the game. And, he said, scared of the weather, got the wrong diet, and your parents push you towards education and not sport. And he turned around and said, Riz, Zesh, you two are good players, but you won't make it. But your kids will have a better chance. Hearing that at 9 and 10, we just sort of thought like, we're good enough and we'll go on and make it, and 30 years later, we're still having this same conversation, and we would just want to do something about it, to be fair. So the players that I work with, the senior pros like Zesh, Danny Bath, Neil Taylor, Mal Benning, Otis Khan, these players are always asked to talk around their background, the lack of Asian players. Instead of talking, we wanted to do something, which was to support the players coming through. We needed to know who's coming through the system now, and what support we can give them, to go on to have careers in the game. And not just the 16 current players in the system, but only less than 1% of players make it anyway. So we know how hard it is, for any player to have a career in professional football. And we're just trying to give that support to players currently in the system now.
Okay, and how much do you think is, because from the sounds of it, your dad kind of encouraged you to think that way, but how much do you think of it is a barrier from Asian parents, and how much do you think of a barrier it is for the system in general?
I think times are changing now. A lot of parents that we work with, a lot of young players, and the parents were born and bred here. They've got a passion for the game. They grew up loving the sport. It's accessible on TV, online, on YouTube, wherever it is. And that's showing, they travel the breadth and country to take their kids everywhere. Academy football is not easy. You're training 3 nights a week. You're traveling on the weekends. And especially if your family's got 2 or 3 kids, you make that commitment to ensure your son's there on time, your daughter's there. on time. They're at tournaments on the weekends. You got the off season. You're doing extra 101 sessions, S&C sessions, extra education. Then you got to balance your religious commitments as well. But I'm seeing the parents now actually taking their kids everywhere, and there's no barriers. If you're good enough, you'll come through. You just got to embrace what's in place in terms of what the clubs put on, and trust the process. My brother's Zesh made his Premier League debut nearly 20 years ago as a South Asian Pakistani born and bred in England. There was no YouTube back there. There were no social media. So if Zesh can do it 20 years ago, and we had no support networks, we had no role models to look up to, no one to touch or to talk to. That's all in place now for these young people. So the only real barrier facing any young sports person stopping them from having a career in the game is really themselves, because the parents will push them the whole way, and the clubs will ensure there's a support mechanism around them as well.
Yeah, fair enough. Osman, you've obviously you specialize in cricket, but you've been following sports for years, and you've also been a sports journalist. What's your take on that? From a cricket perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've just had earlier this summer there was this big report that came out, the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket. It's like a 350-page report, which looked at basically why cricket was as exclusionary as it was throughout the country in England, and the report came on the back of, and you probably both of you have heard of the revelations, I guess, of Azim Rafiq and his time as a British Asian cricketer in Yorkshire, and some of the pretty horrific racism that he faced there. So this report was commissioned in 2021. It was published earlier this year. And it's probably one of the most comprehensive kind of reports into why there are not more Black British players, why there are not more British South Asian players actually playing at the professional level in cricket. And it's some crazy numbers. So you were talking about football's numbers earlier. Cricket is a little bit different in that, recreationally, I think they say that anywhere between 30 to 35% of the game is played by British South Asians. So that's 30 to 35% recreational cricket, so you're playing in the parks, you're playing in clubs and stuff. 30 to 35% are British Asians and Black, sorry, but only 8% of them actually come through to professional level. So there's clearly a drop. So British South Asians and Black British cricketers are playing cricket at a recreational level. So there are kids who are interested in the game, but there's log jams, and the report identifies structural barriers which stops them from kind of coming through to the professional level. So there's only Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid in the England team right now who are kind of the big South Asian role models and who have made it through over the last couple of years, and both of them are double World Cup winners now. So pretty established cricketers. There's always been this impression that there's a lot of South Asians who play cricket, but they just don't come through. And some of the reasons for that, they're really interesting. I came to it from the outside, I guess. I didn't really know how things worked here, but stuff like there's a lack of cricket in state schools, which is a big, and that's a problem not just for British South Asians, but kids of all color. That's a socioeconomic problem, that there is no cricket in state schools where the majority of your children go. There's even cultural differences. So there's this really interesting academic in Birmingham called Tom Brown. He's also a cricket coach. He works with Warwickshire, the cricket county, and he highlighted stuff so you'll have young British South Asian players who are talking to coaches. They're 16 or something, and coaches are talking to them, and they'll be looking down because among Asians it's kind of a sign of respect to look down when somebody senior or an authority is talking to you. But that has been in the past interpreted in the past as a lack of respect, and it's not at all a lack of respect. It's just a little subtle cultural kind of thing which hasn't kind of translated through, and so people aren't aware, and so these kind of things contribute to kids maybe getting put off by the game, maybe not being given the chance that they kind of deserve. So there's a few structural barriers there, but it is a pretty big problem, as that report identified earlier in the year.
I wonder how much of that is also, when kids don't actually speak up, or, when they feel like it's unfair. I often see Aman, my son, when he's put on the bench. And I mean, I am no expert by any means, but I have been, watching him play football since he was 6, and I have been to every match and every league and every training session, and so I can, see that he's actually pretty good and he's improved. He's very hardworking, he's passionate. So sometimes when I'm questioning why is he on the bench, but he'll never speak up. He won't let me say anything to the coach, but he won't speak up either. He won't question it. And so I wonder how much of that is also embedded, in our culture, that you just, you don't rock the boat, don't question authority, don't say anything, and just wait your turn. Do you ever find that happens, Riz?
Yeah, look, we've got young players in our program from under 9s all the way to senior pros. And in fact, we have a young player today who's 16. He's just moved home, so he's moved from Bradford, down to a different club down the south coast. It's only 300-400 miles from his home. He's a Pakistani kid who was born in Bradford, always been around his family. Now suddenly he's in an area which is Sussex. It's predominantly white. And this kid is really confident, but for the last couple of months, it's taken him times to adjust to his new surroundings. And that's where our mentoring program really supports the players, because I think historically there's been no support systems in place for South Asian families or South Asian players before. So when a young player or family, they're in these new environments which they're not used to, and they don't know anyone who's been through that, they've had no one to go to. Mm-hmm. But now, we've got players who have been through what this young player's been through. So we're then able to connect them to one another, connect their families, let them know that, look, this is a whole process. It's all part of growing up. And also, senior pros like Zesh and Danny and Neil, who have played, 400 or 500 career games, they are there for the players if they've got questions around if they're not playing, setbacks, injuries, how to deal with difficult moments, how to deal with being on the bench, what sort of conversations you can have with your coaches, what sort of tone to take with your coach. When is the best time to do that? Before training, after training, during training? So all these little factors, they mount to massive big things which can ultimately affect that player's chances at the club. So that's in place now for the kids. And in fact, we're seeing an increase in the South Asian professional players in English football now. The numbers are increasingly going up. They're nowhere near what they should be. We're working towards a 6% target. And like you said, right now, it's around about just less than 1%. But progress is being made, and we've got to be optimistic about it. And I think what you're doing with your son and you're supporting him, I think that's brilliant. My message to any parent is stick at it. If your son's good enough, or your daughter, they can make it in the game as well.
Yeah, I think.
But it's a battle. Sorry, go on, Osman.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think it's really important. One of the things that I identified in cricket was a lack of diverse role models for kids. There are two great guys in Moeen Ali and Al Rashid. There's a few more kind of lower down, but what Riz was talking about, not having, and they're starting it now, but not having a mentoring program for younger kids, in knowing just how to cope and how to live the life of trying to become an elite athlete. I think those kind of pathways have not been as open to South Asians. Probably in cricket, I would say that they haven't been as open in the past, and it's taken a little bit more for them to kind of jump across the divide. So I think the role models thing and mentoring, which is kind of stuff that Riz is talking about, I think that's doubly important for a lot of British South Asians, and in cricket, even Black British cricketers.
And Charlie, just to say what you said there about it's a battle. But no one said to be a professional sportsman is going to be easy. There's always going to be battles. There's always going to be obstacles along the way. It's either going under or over them. You're going to hit a brick wall now and then, but that's part of growing up. And not all the players are going to make it. So we also put other things in place for them as well, like the aftercare and education, just making them aware that there's chances of you having a career in the game is very minimal. So always think about plan B, plan C, plan D. And that's what we also put in place in terms of our mentoring program as well.
So Riz, I know at the beginning you also said that, it's time to maybe more action and less talk. But I do feel that it's quite important as well. Now that we are developing our South Asian players, in these sports, that we didn't have that before. So for these players to actually come out and talk about some of their experiences and be those mentors and role models for, you know, those kids who are actually trying to make it, like for them to hear, I know, like, you know, if kids could hear that, okay, these are some of the struggles, but this is how we've overcome them. These are the successes, and there is success at the end of it. I think that's a really important messaging for, you know, kids to also hear, not just see, oh, there's someone that looks like me, but also where they feel that, you know, they can resonate with the journey and they can feel part of, actually, yeah, I go through this, and okay, maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel for me as well.
Yeah, 100%, and that's what we do. You know, it's not just about showcasing role models, but them actually young players having physical contact with these players, speaking to them on a regular basis, having the opportunity to build those personal relationships. And once players and families know that we personally care for them, they're more likely to come out of their bubbles, you know, come out of their shell, and be more like themselves. And that takes time, and that is a process. You know, they're not all extroverted, so each player's different and an individual, and we're trying to ensure we build that individual plan around them. But yeah, 100%. They once they can sort of speak to that person as well and get the real insights and the real journey of what it's like, it becomes more realistic for them as well.
But do you think that also starts in schools? I mean, just generally, you know, the whole stereotype at school was that, you know, like, I know when I was at school, South Asians, you know, you need to study and, you know, you're good at maths and science and stuff like that. And then, you know, all my black friends were really pushed towards sports and music. And it's so stereotypical. But do you find that, you know, those things are changing now, that more kids are being pushed towards, you know, what they're actually good at, as opposed to what, you know, we're supposed to be good at?
Yeah. Again, even in football, a lot of the young South Asian players who just recently got their GCSE results, they're all flourishing. A lot of them got, you know, 8s and 9s and A stars, which is really good. And clubs are actually looking for really intelligent and bright players. If you're bright off the pitch, you're gonna be bright on the pitch as well. So we really encourage the young Asian players to make sure they do their education, because that's the way the game's going now. It is going very elite. You know, a lot of the young kids they're in you know, grammar schools are doing really well. Parents are successful, and that's the way the game seems to be going as well. But I think you're right. In school, they do need different experiences, especially at the younger age groups, where 8, 9, 10, 11. We do encourage the parents, like, don't just make football the be all and end all. Can your son, daughter go and play athletics, rugby, cricket, go out with their friends sometimes, go to parties, go to cinema, go bowling with the family, do normal family things? Because when you're 8 and 9, you know, there's a long, long way to go in that sort of athletic journey. So you need to enjoy the process along the way as well. But you're right, it starts with schools, it starts with teachers, and it starts with their mentors at school as well.
Osman, like, even like in cricket, there's and actually in football as well. I mean, even in like India and Pakistan, it's come such a long way. I mean, Pakistan, you know, I've been speaking to the captain of the national women's football team, Marian. Like, it's just amazing, like some of the things that, you know, these countries are producing. And not just that, even in the Olympics and, you know, in all the kind of transnational and international sports. It's just, what do you think has changed now? I mean, you've been following cricket for a very, very long time. It's on a different platform to, you know, where it was even 20 years ago. What do you think has changed?
I think it's gotten bigger. It's everywhere. You know, if you watch, I'll give you an example. Like, it's a very personal example. My niece has you know, started playing cricket suddenly in Karachi at the age of 8. It wasn't because anybody was really pushing her that way, but she saw cricket all around her. She saw literally cricket on the streets outside our house. She saw cricket on the TV. She heard about cricket at school from her friends, occasionally from me when I was there. And you know, it kind of seeped in. It's just because it's so much part of the national discourse. She started playing, and now 8 years later, she's in the kind of under-19 setup. I think what the thing that has really changed, and what I'm finding out through her and her experiences, are that I think society has changed to kind of more and more accept that sports can be a career, and they've seen, they watch a lot of elite cricket on TV. The biggest cricketers in the country are like the biggest celebrities in Pakistan. So they see these models, they see these role models, and they know that these guys can be a success if only they put in the right effort and the hard work. And they, and they're more and more willing to. So some of the girls that my niece plays alongside, maybe 20 years ago, their families would have been like, "There's no way you're playing cricket. You're gonna study at best, and then hopefully you'll just get married, and that's it." Because that's the way it used to be 25 years ago.
Hopefully.
And now, she's playing with girls from all over the country, from all kind of socioeconomic backgrounds, but all of whose parents have said yes, like go out and try and be a cricketer. It's acceptable now, just because I think it's really seeped through like national discourse and just daily public life. It seeps through so deeply now that and for the majority of the country, it is a legitimate career to kind of pursue. And I think that's the biggest change, and that's happened as more money has come into the game and as it's kind of seeped in. I think that's been the biggest change that I've seen, especially in women's cricket. The participation levels in Pakistan have gone through the roof in recent years.
I mean, and it's nice. It's not just cricket, like even, football.
Yeah.
Which I had so many challenges anyway, but now to see women playing football and doing so well, it's just, it's phenomenal. Where do you think that changed?
I think, it's generally that kind of, as society has opened up, a lot of these changes come in through like the influences of television and the internet, and you are exposed to so much more stuff than before, and you're exposed to so many more role models. Like, who would have thought, 10 years ago that Sana Mir, who's the Pakistan women's cricket captain, or was a while ago, and one of the greatest players that the country has produced, she was on like billboards for a Pepsi campaign, like a massive campaign. You would never have thought that even a few years before she got there. Even when she actually got onto the billboard, people were like, "Oh my God, Sana Mir is on like the billboard, massive billboard of like the biggest FMCG product in the company, in the country, Pepsi, and she's one of its role models." So I think, gradually it has changed. And I think like the biggest illustrator of the change actually is if you look at the reactions to the Taliban banning women's education and women's sport in Afghanistan. I think like you'll see pretty much an across the board from any institution you speak to, any country, any government, like there's been across the board condemnation of the fact that they have banned like sport and education for women. And I think that that's just an indicator of how far we've come in that part of the world, especially how far we've come in getting women into public spaces, getting women into playing sport, and not just being what we all thought women should be 20-25 years ago, or what our kind of forefathers thought that women should, the role that they should play in society.
Yeah. And it's nice to see, even in the UK, like Riz, what's your experience with the women playing football in the UK? We've got a few South Asian football players now, don't we?
Yeah, no, definitely. And plus at the PFA, we're the union for all the players in the WSL, so they get all the benefits of the membership, which the same that our senior players in the men's game get as well. In terms of the South Asian players, there's still not as many as we would like. So on my program, we've currently got like 3 players, 2 Pakistani, 1 Indian. But there's a love for the game. A lot of the clubs have centres set up. A lot of the clubs have football activities for young girls. And again, the parents are taking them everywhere. And one of the girls actually, Zeba Shah, Pakistani girl, she just signed her first under 21s contract at Manchester United. And she was playing since she was 3-4 years old. So she's a brilliant role model who genuinely wants to see more young South Asian girls like her playing the game as well. And I took her to a school in Bradford about a month ago, and Zayd was really quite shy. And we had all these young schoolgirls running up to her and wanted to take autographs and ask her to sign their school shirts and trainers, which their teacher wasn't too pleased about. But I think that was the first time Zeba realised that this how big this can be. And I just think if you see a South Asian, Pakistani girl, whatever, Indian girl playing in the WSL Premier League and on TV every single week, I think that would just inspire more girls to take up the game as well. We're already seeing it in England with the England national team doing so well at the World Cup as well.
Yeah.
I think it'll take a bit
We
of
also
time. Yeah,
we also saw it with Bend It Like Beckham. I mean, that film
Exactly.
was legit.
yeah. So I think the girls, in fact, even the girls again on the program. You know, when we do sessions, we integrate them with the boys as well, and the boys are really impressed with the girls, and you know, they treat them no different to they treat their other boy mates. So it's good to see. But yeah, I think we're probably another 10, 15 years where we're going to see more and more girls having careers in the game.
Am I allowed to ask Riz a question?
Of course.
No, it is. I think related to what you were saying earlier. Have like participation levels at like recreational level for South Asians in football, has that like gone through the roof over the last like 10, 15 years? Are there like a lot more South Asian kids playing just recreationally? Because there's always the stereotype that they're into cricket, they're not into football so much. But I think that's completely changed, hasn't it, over the last maybe decade or so?
Yeah, Sport England data showed that as well. So young Asian kids aged between 3 and 11%, 3 and 11 years old, they were playing the same or more than the black or white kids. And it was around about 6% of participation. So we've taken that number to say, right, if there's 6% of South Asians between the ages of 3 to 11 playing recreational football, can we see that same number in the elite academy as well? So numbers are increasing at the grassroots, but what we probably do need to see more of is a lot of kids probably still playing in South Asian leagues as well, which is not a bad thing. But the ones who are really good, can they go and test themselves? Can they go and play in leagues where clubs go and watch and recruit from? So that's the next steps. But that could be financially, that could be social, economically. Comes down to affordability as well. So in terms of recreation and elite, there's two different footballs being played as well in terms of standards.
I was in London over Eid, and all my uncles were in the back in the garden playing cricket. And they said to the boys, and they said to Aman, come play cricket. And he looked at me and he said, I'm not caving into stereotypes. And he picked up the ball and just went and started playing football. And there they were playing football. And I remember when my other cousins looked at me and she was like, what was that? And I said, well, he knows what he wants. He's not giving in. So kudos to him.
Brilliant.
I can definitely tell you, he didn't start football by watching me play it. That was not happening. So I don't know where he even got into it. I don't know anybody in my house that plays football. But it's nice to see. I do. It was what?
It's a smart choice that he made.
It was a smart choice.
Yeah, it's a smart choice that he made.
I mean, we live abroad, so there weren't many options. But again, it's a struggle. Like I said, it's not easy. It sounds like where England is progressing so much and evolving in terms of like the types of players they're bringing in, there's still a long way to go for South Asians. And I don't see that push for, he's been playing with the same team. He was playing with the same team since he was 6 years old, and he's going to be 15. He's only just changed his team. And one of the reasons he changed his team, he just really felt like, he was being bypassed, and he recognizes himself. And for a while, I watched him fluctuate. I watched his whole demeanor where he was questioning his own abilities because he was constantly kind of being told you're not good enough. And so he started to believe that. And it's really sad as a parent to see that and to watch your child go through that. So I can imagine there are so many kids out there who want to play football, who, are so passionate about it, and they're getting the rejection or not, they're just not getting the encouragement from whether it's parents, whether it's from the coaches, whether it's from school. And so it's so important that, the foundation, which is just the encouragement, it's so important to kind of instill in them that, look, you can try. When I tell them you can try. It's still really hard. And you are South Asian, and that doesn't help as well. But that doesn't mean it can't happen if we're progressing. And I read somewhere is that you're doing something about delivering at the unions of the 5-year Asian inclusion strategy, and that's 2020 to 2025. Do you want to talk a bit about what that is?
Yeah, so obviously the aims strategy, the PFA South Asian Inclusion Strategies, is a 5-year program, a 5-year strategy. So we're now moving into year 4 of the strategy, and year on year we've seen good growth. We've got 100% coverage across all 92 league clubs across the game as well. There's good buy from all the stakeholders like the FA, Premier League, English Football League, Kick It Out, Show Us the Red Card. So everyone sort of has seen how we've progressed with our work. But I think it goes back to we still need more kids playing at the grassroots. So we're trying to work with clubs and community trust to see how they can better engage at the early years. So if you're trying to get into academy at 10, 11, 12, it's too late. You need to try and get in by 7, 8. But if you're going to get in by 8 or 9, to get in by 8 or 9, you've had to start playing by the age of 3, 4, 5. And that's when a lot of the young white kids and the black kids are playing. So we really need to get the kids interested in football from a very, very young age. And so all the findings from my work and some of the case studies and our insights, we're now trying to share that far and wide, because I just want more organisations, more clubs doing the work. So like you said, our South Asian kids can get those opportunities from a young age.
Yeah. Oz, do you have anything to add?
No, it's just, I think, I don't know. One of the things I was interested in was seeing whether there is actively a problem of racism in football. And there is, of course, the whole Kick It Out campaign is there because of it. But I think one of the things that has happened in cricket is that it's become more and more evident over the last, 5-6 years that at a lot of different levels of professional cricket, whether that's kind of domestic, county cricket, not so much in the national team itself, because I think the national team actually is a great role model. It's a very diverse team, very open, very, very welcoming. But I think kind of in county cricket and lower down, there is, as well as, these kind of structural barriers for British Asian kids to come through, there is also active racism. Some of the stories that you hear from, there's a Bangladesh player who played for Essex, Jahid Ahmed. Some of the stuff that was said to him over the course of his career, terrible stuff. Azim himself, has battled so hard and went through so much for so long. Cricket Scotland has had issues up north here with racism. It is a very real concern. But I think the one thing that report made clear was, there is racism, there is sexism as well, and there is elitism, at least in cricket, and those three things have kind of combined to make it a very exclusionary sport in this country. And as opposed to cricket in countries like India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, where it is probably the most inclusive activity going in those countries. It is the most democratic activity where if you have talent, you will 90 times out of 100, you will come through. And then, you may not progress after that, but you will come through. Whereas here, I feel like cricket has kind of shrunk as a game in the national conscience, and it's become the exclusive reserve of, and the report confirmed with its numbers, that it's become the reserve of white public school boys. People who go to private schools, white kids from private schools who have access to the facilities, who have the money in the first place to get into those schools. And in those schools are where the best coaches are, and that's essentially where the best chances of you getting through to higher levels is. But that's also where I think a lot of the attitudes of exclusion are fermented, because you don't have enough diversity in those establishments and stuff. So I don't know if there's that kind of problem at a lower level, at a more grassroots level in football. I don't know whether there's an active kind of exclusionary issue in the game there, as there is in cricket, I think.
Yeah, look, I'm not denying the fact that there's not going to be those, stereotypes and racism happening at the grassroots, and probably stopping some of the young kids from progressing into elite academies, or maybe some academies being very selective for what grassroots clubs they choose from. I get messages on social media and emails from parents every single day, telling me that there's racism and the kids can't get in for whatever reason. But we've got to try and remain positive. I think for too long we focus on it's always about the barriers when it comes to South Asian. I don't think we really, shout about Moeen Ali or Moeen or Rashid or Azim, about their achievements and what they've achieved in the game.
Yeah.
It's always, let's talk about the stereotypes and the barriers. Let's talk about the lack of. But how can we actually celebrate some of these? How can we celebrate some of these role models and achievements? So younger kids seeing that, they can also emulate in their footsteps as well. What we just don't have, the Asian population in England is tiny compared to the white British, so naturally we're going to see more kids coming through and more kids playing the game. We just need to see young South Asian communities playing sport and it being accessible to them in communities, in schools, within the different faith centres, wherever they go and pray. It's important that we just give them opportunities. Not that they're going to go and become professional footballers, but it'll actually help with their social skills. It'll help with their fitness. It'll help with their mental health. It'll help with their well-being. If they go and become professional players, that's just a byproduct of everything else. The first and priority will be their education, But then football, they should just see it as a hobby. But yeah, like cricket, like football, like probably other sports in England, there are some structural barriers which are embedded, and it will take time to change the whole system. But all we can do is try.
I agree. And I think starting with the community and parents is so important for that, because that mindset, let them follow their passion, let them play, let them be good. And like I said at the beginning, I struggle and I'm very progressive in that sense. But when it came to him picking his GCSEs, I was like, what do you mean you don't want to take economics? What kind of nonsense is that? We had this whole conversation and, we actually had a argument about it. And I kept saying to myself, don't be that parent. Don't do it. Let him follow his passion. But then the South Asian in me was like, okay, but we need plan B. Economics is plan B. So, if someone like me struggles, I can only imagine what some of these kids go through, especially in, the communities where it's a little bit more kind of integrated. They're kind of integrated into each other and more segregated from the rest of, from other communities. It's a lot harder. It's like my dad telling me, you don't need to go to the gym because you don't need to lose weight. And, it's like, okay, but I need to stay healthy, Dad. It's that forever struggle. But thank you both. But before we finish, I want to ask you, and that is, what does being brown mean to you? So when we're talking about in the context of sport, what does it mean to you when I say, what's brown got to do with it? And I'll start with you, Riz.
Under pressure now. Yeah, brown.
Yeah.
Good. To me, I've never focused on my skin color, but I'm proud to be South Asian and brown, and you can use it to my advantage, to be honest, in different situations. I find myself and sharing my experiences, and hopefully I can come across in a very positive way and showing lots of energy as well.
And Osman?
I'm very, very fortunate in life to have come from compared to a lot of people around me, I've come from some privilege. We've lived abroad all our lives. My parents worked hard and I benefited from that. But I think over the years, as I've done more journalism, as I've gotten deeper into my career, especially since I moved here, I think I've seen that, it's opened my eyes to the brown experience not being the same for a lot of people in different countries. And it's very, very complicated. I think being brown here for me has meant to be able to kind of understand how complex and complicated the issues that South Asians face in this country are, and how, how difficult it is to kind of work your way out of it. But then you see guys like Riz, and you see other guys like Moeen Ali, and you see so many more role models coming in now that I think that just leaves you with a sense of hope. I have kids growing up in this country, and I feel like it's going to be better for them than it has been. Not for me, I've had a great life, but I think growing up for them, if they grow up in this country, it's going to be a better experience for them as brown kids than it has been for a lot of brown kids who came before them.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, London is way more diverse now than it has ever been. And I asked somebody, I think it was one of my cousins, this question, like, what do you identify as? And he said, actually, I identify as a Londoner. I don't identify as British, Asian, anything like that. He lives in Brazil. He said, but I actually identify as a Londoner, not even like the UK, because London is so diverse and you just don't get that diversity anywhere else. And I think that really kind of resonated with me that, yeah, if I am a Londoner, like through and through, and it's one of the best parts of growing up. Like you just have access to everybody and everything around you. It's amazing. Anyway, on that note, thank you both so much for taking time out. Great conversation, and looking forward to that 0.45% increasing very soon. Thank you, and we'll speak soon.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.